3 years after Adrian Cross buried his younger brother, the woman he believed responsible returned to the estate where everything had begun. The Cross property stood outside Savannah beside a dark river, surrounded by ancient oaks heavy with Spanish moss. That evening, a violent summer storm rolled across the water, lightning flashing behind the white column mansion. Adrian watched from the front steps as a black sedan approached. At 34, he had become the unquestioned head of the Cross organization. Broad-shouldered, disciplined, and feared, Adrian carried power quietly. Nolan's death had stripped away whatever softness he once possessed. His younger brother had been murdered 3 years earlier after leaving a private family gathering. Claire Whitmore disappeared from Savannah only hours later. To Adrian, that had always been enough. Investigators found Claire's broken bracelet near Nolan's body, her fingerprints inside his car, and a threatening message apparently sent from her phone. No evidence proved Claire fired the fatal shot. Adrian had never needed more. In his mind, she had betrayed Nolan. Now Claire stepped from the sedan into the rain. At 29, she still carried the same elegant composure Adrian remembered, but 3 years had sharpened it into something colder. Her dark hair was pulled back from a pale, guarded face, and she moved toward the house without hesitation. Adrian's security team stopped her before she reached the stairs. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The hatred in his expression was controlled enough to feel more dangerous than anger. Claire understood immediately that nothing had changed. To Adrian, she was still the woman who destroyed his brother. What he did not know was why she had stayed away. Hours after Nolan's murder, someone had threatened Claire's younger sister. If Claire spoke about what happened that night, her sister would die. Fear had kept her silent. She had never told Adrian. Not yet. Adrian assumed her return meant money, leverage, or another attempt to manipulate the Cross family. Claire had come for something else. Her mother had recently died and left behind a sealed document tied to Nolan's private investigation. Claire requested access to the family archive Nolan had used before his death. Adrian refused immediately. Then Claire removed a sealed envelope from her coat. Inside was an old photograph. Nolan stood near the river less than an hour before he was murdered. Adrian recognized his brother instantly. Then his attention shifted to the background. Lightning flashed outside as Adrian studied the second man in the image. For 3 years, Adrian had built his grief around Claire's guilt because hatred had been easier than admitting he never truly understood what happened to Nolan. Now one photograph threatened everything he believed. The man standing behind Nolan had sworn under oath that he was nowhere near Savannah that night. It was Adrian's own uncle, Malcolm Cross. Adrian did not believe one photograph was enough to condemn Malcolm Cross. Malcolm had helped raise him and Nolan after their father died. For decades, he had been the advisor Adrian trusted when everyone else wanted something from the Cross family. So Adrian did what he always did when emotion threatened judgment. He moved the problem somewhere controlled. By the next afternoon, he and Claire were inside a restored hunting lodge deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. Heavy rain struck the roof while dense forests pressed around the property, cutting them off from roads, neighbors, and most of Adrian's organization. Nolan had once used the lodge while quietly investigating internal financial theft. That made it useful now. Claire was not exactly free to leave. Adrian did not touch her or threaten her physically, but his security controlled the roads and every exit. She understood that until he had answers, she remained both witness and suspect. Adrian searched through Nolan's old belongings. Inside a locked cabinet, Claire recognized a small leather notebook Nolan had carried during the final months of his life. Several pages had been torn out. What remained changed the story. Claire finally revealed why she had been meeting Nolan in secret. They had not been lovers. Nolan had asked for her help after Claire's mother, an accountant, discovered suspicious Cross family money moving through shell companies. Nolan believed someone inside Adrian's own organization was stealing from him. On the night Nolan died, Claire had been carrying copies of those records. She never reached him. Her vehicle had been intercepted on an isolated road. Someone took her bracelet and threatened to kill her younger sister if Claire ever spoke about what happened. Adrian wanted to reject the explanation, but if Claire was telling the truth, then the bracelet found beside Nolan had not been evidence. It had been planted. He checked the old case files himself. The threatening message supposedly sent from Claire's phone had been transmitted after a device had already disconnected from the cellular network. That should have been impossible, unless someone had cloned it. For the first time, Adrian felt something more dangerous than anger. Doubt. The strongest evidence against Claire was collapsing piece by piece, and every contradiction pointed toward preparation rather than coincidence. Someone had not merely murdered Nolan. Someone had designed the scene to control what Adrian believed afterward. Then another name surfaced: Detective Warren Hale. Warren had led the original homicide investigation and repeatedly pushed suspicion toward Claire before retiring unexpectedly months later. Adrian now wondered whether Warren had missed the contradictions or buried them. Claire continued searching Nolan's notebook. Near the back, she found Malcolm's initials beside a handwritten reference to an unknown location. Most of the sentence had been torn away. Only 2 words remained. Adrian stared at them as the rain hammered the windows. Ask Warren. Adrian spent 3 years hunting the woman he blamed, while the detective who gave him that answer had quietly disappeared beside the sea. Warren Hale was living under his own name in a fishing town near Cape Hatteras, surrounded by weathered docks, gray Atlantic water, and dunes beaten flat by coastal wind. Adrian brought Claire with him, not because he trusted her completely, because Nolan's financial records meant more to her than they did to anyone else. Warren refused to meet them at first. That changed when Adrian appeared outside his modest waterfront house. The retired detective looked older than Adrian remembered, but fear appeared before recognition. Warren had been expecting the past to find him eventually. During Nolan's murder investigation, evidence had disappeared before reaching the official case file. Warren had noticed. When he questioned those inconsistencies, someone threatened his family. He accepted early retirement and left Savannah. Adrian felt no sympathy. Fear explained Warren's silence. It did not excuse what that silence had done to Claire. Then Warren revealed what had been removed. The murder weapon was never recovered, but ballistic analysis showed Nolan had been shot with a firearm registered across family security. That finding vanished from the final report. Only 3 senior people could authorize access to that weapon's inventory: Adrian, Malcolm Cross, and Elias Vane. Elias was 40, calm, disciplined, and one of Adrian's longest-serving security men. He had protected both brothers for years. Adrian immediately resisted the implication. He had already been wrong about Claire. He was not ready to believe someone else he trusted might have betrayed Nolan. Warren continued. Nolan had not died immediately. Blood patterns suggested he survived the first shot long enough to crawl toward his vehicle. Investigators found a small digital storage key beneath the driver's seat. It disappeared before evidence processing. Claire went still. Nolan had once given her mother an identical device. Her mother had told Claire it contained accounting backups and should never leave her possession. Suddenly, the threats against Claire made more sense. Her mother may have known enough to expose whoever killed Nolan. Claire admitted that fear had controlled her after the murder. For years, Adrian had treated that silence as proof of guilt. Now he was beginning to understand the difference between someone hiding because they were guilty and someone hiding because they were terrified. Warren identified the officer who removed the storage key. That officer later left police work and became head of private security at a Cross-owned resort. He reported directly to Elias Vane. Adrian felt the investigation shifting beneath him. Claire had not destroyed Nolan's memory. His own certainty may have helped the real killers bury it. Before they left, Warren opened an old envelope he had hidden from the official case. Inside was a forgotten crime scene photograph. Near Nolan's vehicle, beside the blood trail, was a second set of footprints. Warren had eventually identified the pattern. They belonged to a man officially declared dead 2 years before Nolan was murdered. The footprints in Warren Hale's photograph belonged to Adrian Cross. Adrian recognized the name immediately. Gavin had been his cousin, a former transport manager inside the Cross organization, and one of the few men Nolan had once trusted. 5 years before Nolan's murder, Gavin supposedly died in a warehouse fire. His body had been identified through dental records. Malcolm had personally handled the identification. That detail no longer felt reassuring. It felt suspicious. Claire then remembered something her mother once mentioned about a private safe deposit box connected to a cross-owned resort outside Aspen. Her mother had attended financial conferences there for years. If she had kept Nolan's duplicate storage key anywhere, it might still be there. Adrian moved quickly. By the following evening, he and Claire arrived at the secluded Colorado resort under tight security. Early snowfall covered the pine-covered mountains in white. Glass and stone buildings reflected pale winter light, and luxury vehicles moved quietly beneath heated entrances. The moment Adrian entered, the atmosphere changed. Staff members became more careful. Security men straightened. Managers lowered their voices. Claire finally saw what grief had turned Adrian into. He did not need to threaten people. His reputation did it for him. But she also noticed the cost. Everyone obeyed him. Very few seemed close to him. For the first time, Adrian stopped treating Claire like someone he needed to contain. He began treating her like someone whose judgment mattered. That change was small. But after 3 years of hatred, Claire noticed it. The safe deposit box was still registered under her mother's name. Inside were old tax files, handwritten notes, and a small digital storage key identical to the one Warren described. Nolan's encrypted records were still intact. They spent hours reviewing them. The files revealed millions of dollars moving through shell companies controlled by Malcolm Cross. Then another name appeared, Elias Vane. Transfers connected to Elias had been buried beneath security contracts and transportation expenses. But the most disturbing records involved Gavin. Several payments had been made to him years after his supposed death. Gavin had survived the warehouse fire. Someone had helped erase him, and that someone appeared to be Malcolm. Nolan had discovered the arrangement shortly before his murder. Adrian finally understood what Claire had been trying to prove. Nolan had not died because of her. He had died because he found something inside his own family. Then one final transaction complicated everything. 3 days before Nolan's death, a large payment had been sent directly from Nolan's personal account to Gavin. Adrian's expression hardened. For one dangerous moment, suspicion shifted toward his brother. Claire stopped him from making the same mistake twice. Evidence could be real and still tell the wrong story. Context mattered. Adrian had already destroyed 3 years of Claire's life by forgetting that. Before they could examine the payment further, a security alert appeared on Adrian's phone. The resort cameras had identified a new arrival. Elias Vane had just entered Aspen, and Adrian had never told him they were there. By nightfall, the Aspen resort was trapped beneath a blizzard. Snow buried the mountain roads, wind battered the glass walls, and every route out disappeared beneath white. Adrian moved Claire and Nolan's digital evidence into a private club beneath the resort, where stone walls, bright fireplaces, and high windows overlooking the storm created the illusion of safety. Then Elias Vane arrived. His explanation was simple. Adrian's unexplained travel had triggered internal security protocols, and Elias had followed because the head of the Cross organization had vanished without notifying his own protection team. It sounded reasonable. That was what made it dangerous. Adrian did not accuse him. Claire watched instead. Elias behaved exactly as a loyal security director should. He checked entrances, reviewed guard rotations, and repeatedly positioned himself between Adrian and potential threats. Nothing about him looked like betrayal. They returned to Nolan's encrypted files. The mysterious payment to Gavin finally made sense. Nolan had not been paying him as a partner. He had been baiting him. By transferring money directly, Nolan created a financial trail that exposed one of Gavin's hidden accounts. He planned to use it to trace Gavin back to Malcolm's network. Nolan had been preparing to show everything to Adrian. He never got the chance. Another file revealed that Nolan suspected someone inside Adrian's security operation was leaking his movements. Elias's credentials appeared repeatedly, but Claire noticed something important. Several access dates occurred while Elias was documented in other cities. Someone else had been using his identity. The pattern was disturbingly familiar. Claire's phone had been cloned. Now Elias's credentials appeared to have been copied too. That led them to Rowan Pierce. Rowan was Elias's younger deputy, ambitious, quiet, and easy to overlook. He had access to the same digital systems, security schedules, and weapons inventory. Adrian remembered something else. Rowan had been working security the night Nolan died. Before they could confront him, every external communication line went dead. Then the backup system failed. A blast shook the lower level. One of Adrian's vehicles had exploded in the parking area. A diversion. Security rushed toward the emergency. When Adrian returned to the secure room, the digital key was gone. Elias lay unconscious near the doorway. Claire had disappeared. For one terrible moment, Adrian felt the old certainty return. 3 years earlier, Claire had vanished after Nolan's murder. Now she had vanished again. But this time, Adrian forced himself not to decide what the evidence meant before understanding it. Security footage showed Rowan leading Claire through a private service corridor. Then another camera captured something stranger. Claire was not struggling. She was following him. Adrian spent 3 years punishing her for betrayal. Now, at the exact moment he had begun believing her innocence, the same fear was asking him to make the same mistake again. Then Rowan's abandoned phone was recovered. A live message from Malcolm Cross remained on the screen. The instruction contained only 5 words. Bring Claire to Gavin alive. Claire had not followed Rowan willingly. She had followed because he threatened to kill Elias and destroy the remaining evidence if she resisted. By dawn, Rowan had taken her deep into Colorado mountains, far beyond the Aspen Resort, to an abandoned mining settlement buried beneath snow. Weathered cabins stood between frozen pine trees. Rusted mining equipment disappeared beneath white drifts, and old wooden structures leaned against a mountain as if the entire place had been forgotten. Someone had not forgotten it. Rowan had used the settlement for Malcolm Cross for years. He was not the mastermind. He was an employee who had learned how valuable loyalty became when nobody noticed him. Then Claire saw the man waiting inside the largest cabin. Gavin Cross. Alive. He looked older than the photographs Adrian remembered, with gray beginning at his temples and scars cutting across one side of his face. 5 years earlier, the Cross family had buried him. Malcolm had made sure of that. After Gavin stole money from family operations, Malcolm helped fake his death in the warehouse fire. In exchange, Gavin disappeared from public life and became Malcolm's hidden operator. Together, they redirected money, manipulated transport contracts, and built a financial network Adrian never knew existed. Nolan discovered them. The night Nolan died, Gavin went to meet him. His purpose had been intimidation. Nolan refused to stay silent. But Gavin insisted on one detail that changed everything. Nolan had already been shot when Gavin arrived. Someone else had reached him first. Claire immediately understood the significance. The second set of bloody footprints. The unexplained timing. The murder scene had never been one event. It had been 2. Gavin admitted helping Malcolm stage everything afterward. Claire's bracelet had been planted. Her phone had been cloned. The threatening message had been manufactured. She was chosen because Malcolm understood Adrian better than anyone. Adrian would suspect an outsider before his own family. Claire had not been framed because she was weak. She had been framed because Adrian's loyalty to blood could be turned into a weapon. Then Gavin revealed that Claire's mother had known enough to become dangerous. She had been threatened into silence. Her later death, officially treated as natural, suddenly looked different. Meanwhile, Adrian traced Rowan's abandoned phone to the mining settlement. Elias had survived the attack and confirmed Rowan had been abusing his security credentials for years. Adrian headed into the mountains. At the settlement, Gavin finally prepared to reveal the shooter. It had not been Malcolm. It had not been Rowan. It was someone Nolan trusted enough to meet alone. Before Gavin could explain further, gunfire erupted outside. Malcolm's men had arrived to erase everyone who knew too much. Gavin finally understood that Malcolm had never planned to let him survive once Claire learned the truth. As Adrian reached the settlement, Gavin gave Claire the name of Nolan's killer, Victoria Cross, Adrian's late father's widow. Adrian had hunted Claire for 3 years while the woman who helped raise him remained protected by the one thing nobody in the Cross family had ever questioned: blood. Victoria Cross had entered Adrian and Nolan's lives after their biological mother died. Elegant, controlled, and endlessly composed, she had helped raise both brothers and had always appeared especially devoted to Nolan. That was what made Gavin's evidence almost impossible for Adrian to accept. Victoria had met Nolan the night he died. and Malcolm had spent 3 years making sure nobody discovered it. By the time Adrian and Claire reached the Cross family's historic lake house in northern Minnesota, heavy snowfall had covered the surrounding pine forest and frozen the lake into a pale sheet of ice. The wooden house glowed warmly against the storm. Adrian remembered childhood winters there. Now every memory felt contaminated. Victoria had retreated to property and ordered Malcolm to meet her there. Before confronting either of them, Adrian and Claire secured copies of Gavin's evidence outside the Cross family network. Adrian would not make the same mistake again. This time, truth would exist somewhere his family could not erase it. The evidence revealed Victoria's motive. Years earlier, Adrian's father had planned to reduce Victoria's access to the family holdings. Fearing financial dependence, she secretly began funding Malcolm's hidden operation. The arrangement made her wealthy. It also trapped her. When Nolan uncovered the diverted money, he discovered Victoria's role. She met him privately to convince him to remain silent. The confrontation escalated. Victoria panicked. She shot him. Gavin arrived afterward. Then Malcolm transformed one impulsive murder into a carefully engineered conspiracy. He planted Claire's bracelet. He used a clone phone message. He manipulated the investigation. And he directed Adrian's grief toward the easiest target, Claire. Adrian finally understood the full cruelty of it. Malcolm had not simply hidden Nolan's killer. He had weaponized Adrian himself. For 3 years, Claire carried the punishment for a murder committed by someone Adrian called family. When Malcolm arrived at the lake house, he expected Victoria to control Adrian as she always had. Instead, Adrian already possessed evidence Malcolm could no longer bury. Victoria's composure began to crack. Malcolm immediately turned against her, attempting to separate his financial crimes from the murder. The alliance that had survived for years collapsed within minutes. Adrian's anger returned with frightening force. Claire saw what he was about to become. The same man who punished first and questioned later. She refused to let vengeance decide another ending. This time, Adrian listened. Authorities were already on their way. For once, truth would matter more than revenge. But before they arrived, Victoria revealed one final detail. Nolan had known the meeting could kill him, and somewhere inside the lake house, he had hidden a final message meant only for Adrian. Adrian found Nolan's final message hidden inside an old family keepsake at the Minnesota Lake House. It was exactly where Victoria said it would be. The recording had been made hours before Nolan met her. Nolan already suspected Malcolm, Gavin, and Victoria were involved in financial crimes against the Cross family. He knew the evidence might never reach Adrian if something happened to him. But the most painful part was not the conspiracy. It was Claire. Nolan had feared Adrian would blame her. He knew someone could plant evidence, manipulate grief, and use Adrian's loyalty to family against him. So Nolan had tried to protect Claire before he died. Adrian listened in silence. For 3 years, he believed revenge honored his brother. Instead, his certainty had helped Nolan's killers succeed. Victoria and Malcolm were eventually charged for their roles in the murder and financial conspiracy. Gavin cooperated with investigators, but his assistance did not erase his part in staging the crime. Rowan Pierce was arrested. Elias Vane was cleared. Warren Hale's silence became public, though his testimony helped complete the case. And Claire Whitmore was officially declared innocent. Adrian did not ask her to forgive him. He understood now that apologies could not return 3 stolen years. His hatred had isolated Claire, endangered her family, and strengthened the very conspiracy that killed Nolan. Claire returned to Savannah only to settle her mother's estate and rebuild her accounting work. She did not rush toward Adrian. He did not pressure her. Instead, Adrian changed the Cross organization. He separated legitimate businesses from criminal operations, removed family members from positions they had held through blood alone, and dismantled the structure that allowed Malcolm to hide betrayal behind loyalty. Several months passed. The riverfront estate outside Savannah slowly changed too. The same house that once felt like a fortress became quieter, brighter, and less guarded. When Claire eventually returned there, no security team stopped her. No accusation waited at the door. Adrian met her as a man who finally understood that Nolan's memory did not require revenge. It required truth. Their connection rebuilt slowly. Claire did not forget what Adrian had done, but she began noticing that he no longer expected her to carry his anger. One afternoon, Adrian visited Nolan's grave. For the first time, he stood there without blaming Claire. Later, she joined him by choice. That mattered more than forgiveness, spoken too quickly. Adrian had spent 3 years believing vengeance would honor his brother. The truth destroyed that version of him, but it also gave him the chance to become someone Nolan might have recognized again. Days later, Claire opened one final document from her mother's archive. It referenced a confidential Cross account Nolan had never investigated. The account had been opened years before Malcolm's scheme began. Claire stared at the name attached to it. Adrian and Nolan's biological mother, a woman officially declared dead 22 years earlier.